Welcome to her remarkable history. Remember, to support our channel, please subscribe. The Forbidden Love of Queen Victoria. In British history, one of the most famous royal couples to note are Victoria and Albert, a love story that transcends time. Victoria adored Albert. He was her lover, her friend, and her confidant. But there were other men before him who tried to win the hand of Victoria. One man even came close to taking her as his bride. But who are the other suitors and romances before she became a wife? In 1837, Victoria ascended to the throne. Her reign ended a 120-year Hanoverian rule that brought years of dissolute male ordinance. Victoria was 18 years old, and she was, as a byproduct, young and untainted. She would bring a sense of goodness and wisdom, and she was full of beauty and hope for her nation. As such, Victoria would receive a mass of letters. These were a rainstorm of self-possessed love for the Queen. The suitors would profess their love for her, and steady flow of stalkers and admirers would be known by the press as the Queen's lovers. One of the first men who stalked the Queen was known as Captain John Good. The press reported that he was delusional and believed that he was destined to have Victoria's hand in marriage. As such, he began to stalk her when she was still living at Kensington Palace. He was found lingering outside and inquiring at the grand entrance the state of Queen's health and endeavouring to get in for the purpose of writing his name in the visiting book. Good even tailed Victoria on her holiday to Ramsgate and Hastings. Also, when at Kensington, despite being removed on several occasions, he would make his way back with the hope of spotting her. Whenever her carriage emerged through the gates, he would follow in his own cart. If the carriage stopped, he would jump out and try and accost Victoria. Good had been arrested several times for harassing the Queen, but in the November of 1837 he was committed to the Bethlehem lunatic asylum, and the Queen was then finally safe from him. There have been many examples of mad men trying to profess their love to the Queen. One man got into the Chapel Royal so that he could declare his love, and another, a captain in the 5th Light Dragoons called Tom Flower, attempted to make his way into the Queen's coronation ceremony. This is only after failing to get into her box at the opera. Flower was arrested and sent to Tothill Fields House of Correction. Others tried to accost the Queen by stopping her horse when she was out riding, and one even managed. A man named Ned Hayward. He did so in Hyde Park, and he handed the Queen a letter where he asked if she would marry him. Another man, dubbed by the press as the Queen's last lunatic lover, was John Stock Ledge. In the winter of 1837, he tried to get into Windsor Castle. He's quoted as saying upon his questioning, "He was like all other men who wanted wives. He was looking after one, and thought the Queen would fit the bill." Victoria may or may not have been looking for love herself, and she may have had mad men and lunatics trying to force her hand as she became of age, but, in a sad reality, like most royalty in the past, Victoria's future, her husband, had already been chosen for her right from the day she was born. Victoria's mother and her uncle had it all mapped out. Victoria would marry into the Saxe-Coburg family, a German prince more specifically, her cousin Albert. Albert was born just 3 months after Victoria. As a teen, there were many candidates for the would-be Queen of Britain's hand. All across Europe, talk of the most eligible royal bride sparked interest. Between 13 and 18, there were many possible suitors for the princess, and these were paraded for her approval. There was a suggestion to marry an English prince, Prince George, son of her uncle the Duke of Cumberland, but Victoria never liked him, and he did not particularly like her. Another suggestion was the Duke of Orleans, but he was a no as he was Catholic. More suggestions came Victoria's way, such as one of the Princes of Orange, but then a serious rush of matchmaking occurred. when the brothers of Saxe-Coburg were invited to England. Albert and Ernest and the Princes of Orange all came to England to be vetted. The Princes of Orange were a strong choice for William IV, but Victoria wasn't taken by them. Interestingly, at first, Victoria found Albert to be pudgy and was very unimpressed. Instead, she was more taken with his brother, Ernest. She thought he was more attractive. When Victoria had been on the throne just 2 years, she found herself under the increasing pressure of marriage. Victoria wanted to wait a few more years. However, the May of 1839 found Victoria enjoying her life, and the first serious romantic encounter of her life came along. Now, this wasn't a Saxe-Coburg brother. Instead, it was a Russian. The heir to the Russian throne, the Grand Duke Alexander Nikolaevich, was visiting London, and it was Victoria's first experience of entertaining royalty. There wasn't any warning, though, as she is recorded as telling the Prime Minister, Lord Melbourne, that she was quite cross about it. However, she changed her tune somewhat when Alexander arrived, for he was tall, with a fine figure, a pleasing open countenance, without being handsome, fine blue eyes, a short nose, and a pretty mouth with a sweet smile. Alexander came bearing gifts of diamond boxes and rings, and he was, for the sake of the standards at the time, accommodated at Mervet's Hotel, now Claridge's, not by the Queen. So when Victoria invited him to spend 3 days at Windsor, there was a lot of disapproval. Victoria was entranced by the Grand Duke. He was clearly very adept at the art of seduction, and he flattered and whispered sweet nothings in French into her ear. Victoria and the Grand Duke would dance, and she is noted as saying how much she enjoyed his company. The Queen danced the first and last dance with the Grand Duke, made him sit near her, and tried to be very civil to him, and I think we are great friends already and get on very well. I like him exceedingly. The pair also went to an Italian opera, where, although they had separate boxes, the Grand Duke snuck into the Queen's box in the interval, and this sent tongues wagging. Members of the Russian entourage noticed a fair degree of flirting going on between them, and a dispatch was sent to Tsar Nicholas in Russia. The Queen is clearly enjoying the society of His Imperial Majesty. Everyone is saying they are an ideal couple. Were the Grand Duke to make a proposal to the Queen, it would be accepted without hesitation. But that would not be possible, for Alexander was obliged by duty to stay in Russia, and Victoria was Queen of Britain. It was strategically, politically, geographically out of the question. The Tsar did not want his son to marry the English Queen, and the English government did not want Victoria to marry and to share power with a Russian. In private, the lovers both wept bitter tears over the disappointment when Tsar Nicholas ordered Alexander back to Darmstadt. On the 27th of May, Alexander enjoyed a farewell dinner in the magnificent St. George's Hall in the state apartments at Windsor. It looked beautiful, the Queen noted. At a little after 12, we went into the dining room for supper. After supper they danced a mazurka for half an hour. I should think nearly. The Grand Duke asked me to take a turn, which I did. The Grand Duke is very strong, that in running round you must follow quickly, and after that you are whisked round like a vase, which is very pleasant. I never enjoyed myself more. We were all so merry. I got to bed by 2:45, but could not sleep till 5. Alexander gave a parting gift of £20,000 to various charities and the needy, and he also donated £300 to the Jockey Club. In gratitude, the club established a race in his honour, the Tsarevich Handicap, using the Victorian rendition of Tsarevich then in use, which has been run at Newmarket ever since. During his farewell to Victoria, Alexander is noted as saying how touched he was by the reception he'd received in England. He trusted that all would only tend to strengthen the ties of friendship between England and Russia. I kissed his cheek, upon which he kissed mine, in a very warm, affectionate manner, and we again warmly shook hands. I felt so sad to take leave of this dear, amiable young man, whom I really think, talking jokily, I was a little in love with. Victoria was saddened by the departure of Alexander. She felt she may have even been in love with him, and his departure upset her greatly. However, within the month, Victoria received the news that Alexander reluctantly became engaged to Princess Mary of Darmstadt, who was 15 years of age. With Victoria now in a state of disappointment, she decided that she was not ready to marry. She dug in her heels, even with the prospect of her cousin, Prince Albert, being suited with her to marry. Albert had been groomed for the role of prince consort to a queen, but even so, Victoria was having none of it. She was still very much upset about the whole Grand Duke Alexander shebang. On the 15th of July, she told her uncle Leopold, "Though all the reports of Albert are most favourable, and though I have little doubt I shall like him, still one can never answer beforehand for feelings, and I may not have the feelings for him which is requisite to ensure happiness. I may like him as a friend, and as a cousin, and as a brother, but no more." Leopold and Victoria were discussing Albert, and how Leopold thought he would be a good match, but this upset Albert, and he grew impatient, so much so that he threatened to withdraw his interest, and this news reached Victoria. Although a visit was scheduled for Albert and Ernest in the October, Victoria was not amused. "I think they don't exhibit much impressment, urgency, to come here, and which rather shocks me." But when Victoria, who had not seen Albert in 3.5 years, set eyes on him, everything changed. He was so handsome and charming. He was no longer the gawky German frog. Instead, he was the man she has always dreamed of, her Prince Charming. I went to the top of the staircase and received my 2 cousins, Ernest and Albert, whom I found grown and changed and embellished. It was with some emotion that I beheld Albert. Victoria wrote in her journal, describing him in every aspect, how excessively handsome he was. He had such beautiful blue eyes, an exquisite nose, and such a pretty mouth with delicate mustachios and slight but very slight whiskers, a beautiful figure, broad in the shoulders and a fine waist. Albert was a fantastic dancer, and when on the 11th of October they danced and Victoria gave him a flower, he cut a hole in his uniform and placed the flower over his heart. This made Victoria swoon over him, and she then, wasting no time at all, made up her mind. She was to marry Albert. After securing the approval of the Prime Minister, he said, "I think it is a very good thing, and you'll be much more comfortable, for a woman cannot stand alone for long, in whatever position she is." Thank you for watching, and to support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.